We embrace those opportunities and also mitigate those risks. So all of these technological changes have real impacts on our workforce. Um, there is a big fear that you can see all over the news that AI and automation are constantly taking jobs away from people. But if you look at evidence from the World Economic Forum, they run an annual report called the Future of Jobs Report that looks all over the world at changing job trends. Um, that's actually not fully substantiated by the data. Um, 22% of the labor market will turn over in the next 5 years, but projections show that there will be more jobs created than lost. And you see here on this chart, the yellow squares are showing you millions of jobs that are going to be created, and about 20 million fewer than that will be lost. Um, it's just that the jobs that will be created are going to be different than the ones that exist today. Different jobs that require different skills. And those jobs in the middle that are marked as stable, they may have the same job title, they may have the same high level job description, but how people are going to be engaging with the workforce is going to be fundamentally different as technology continues to evolve. And you see that play out in jobs that are fast declining and jobs that are fast growing. Many declining jobs involve routine rule-based tasks that can be automated and reduce the need for human input. Um, but as AI automates routine tasks and processes, cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, and creative thinking are becoming much more valuable, um, making humans even more important than they were in the past. So just want to pause there for a second, give you an opportunity to take a look at this list. I'm not going to read it out loud to you, and invite you to reflect for just a moment on how do you see this playing out in your own work across the Commonwealth with the young people who you're preparing. Amanda, I don't know if you want to offer a reflection or if you're seeing anybody in the room thinking about it, but let's just pause there for just a moment.
Yeah, we're getting the camera switched around so you can actually see people.
No worries.
So what comes to mind just from those first two slides? Please do not be bashful. We are not a bashful group. What sticks out? Fearful or something that you already see?
I see a lot of kids that are not willing to try. That fear paralysis is very much something that I'm seeing every day in my classroom. The fear of failure, and just not needing to take a step to try. And so when I look at the fastest growing jobs, there is a lot of risk there in that they need to try things, they need to tinker, they need to think, they need to, if this doesn't work, then can I go a different direction? Versus I push the button and I put in your order and I give it what comes out to you. And that is a huge fear of mine in the classroom every single day with students. As to how do we overcome that from a very young age? Because if we can't overcome that at a very young age, then they're not even making it to the college level to get to those classes. And then what do we do?
Yeah, Beth.
Okay, so I think as educators, we have to consider the expediency of what we're doing because it's changing so quickly. And when you think about where we've come and how quickly it's moving forward, and we don't know what it's going to look like, but I think as educators, we have to grasp the fact that it is changing, and we have to change with it and be willing to make those accommodations to fit it.
Sure.
I think at the post-secondary level, what I'm seeing a lot is the fear paralysis of things moving so quickly because we are the older portion of the timeline that was just sown with the development of AI. Some people are very on board and some people are very against it because they're unsure how it will change the job market because we're getting to that point where we have to start looking for jobs and it's scary on its face value. And then in addition to all of these new changes, I think a lot of students are really afraid to try, but in a different way because it's so ever changing and no one really knows what's going to come next.
And their relevance, right? Like they thought they were on cutting edge and then it's changing. Yeah, John.
So I would say, so short-term versus long-term goals with the population, that I deal with. These are working age Kentuckians. And, so the median age of a GED test taker is 29. So these are relatively young folks, but again, they are working age Kentuckians, and a significant percentage of them are below the secondary level. People don't realize that. They are below the 9th grade level, so it takes time to graduate them up to a secondary level. Then they can take the GED ready test, then make an attempt with the GED. Having said that and framing that, they are continuously in the survival mode, and they can, from a vision standpoint, see an opportunity to thrive and fill some of these vacancies that exist that require a post-secondary credential. So that's a significant challenge as far as population I serve.
100%.
I'll just say, can I say?
Yeah, please.
So I'll just say from a school counselor and also one of my roles at Greg is the college and career readiness. And so both of those, you know, even as a career teacher before I moved into this role, thinking of helping our students think about careers that we don't know what's going to be out there yet is hard. And then also talking with parents
Yes.
of trying to get them to see what is out there. And so those are like some of those conversations that we need to be trying to have.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Well, I think, of course, it's from an organizational perspective, how many of our institutions are future ready and student ready based on these data, this knowledge? The second thing I would think too, are we preparing our teachers to be able to interact and teach to these population groups? Third thing, I look at the major degree, I'll talk about post-secondary. Are we really looking at 5 and 10 years down the road, what's going to be there versus what we're dealing with right now? And then how do we create that transition organizationally to think about along those terms? If we are still doing the same things we did 10 years ago, we know it's bad. But it's almost like if we're doing the same thing we've been doing for the last 5 years, we know it's not good either. So how do we change our mentality and the organizational design to focus on really the future? Because as you see, it's changing so fast. By the time someone gets a 4-year degree, or in some cases, if they get a 1-year degree or a 2-year degree, how well are they prepared for the workforce that we then interlude with them somewhere along their design?
Absolutely.
No, man.
Oh, yes, sir.
You know, you look at this list 10 years from now, some of these jobs in the fastest growing list may be in the fastest declining list.
Yep.
Because things are changing so rapidly.
That's right.
So we've got to get our students and our adult population in the mindset that it's going to be lifelong learning.
Yeah,
As
absolutely.
technology changes, as there are advances, or if there are needs for different skill sets, we are continually going to be learning new skill sets
That's right.
as we go forward.
So
And my
true.
wife won't let me have it less.
But you're right. You're right. And actually, Nathan, I think it tees up your next slide. I will tell you, this was a big point of contention when we met with the campus presidents. Because what they brought up, Representative, was computer science. We went after computer science hard for a long time. And I don't know if you guys, even in K-12, seen that code.org is not pushing Day of Code anymore. It's AI Day. So they've backed way off of the coding because AI is coding at a faster rate and more advanced than our computer scientists, right? That we pushed for, and that was only in 2015 when we did that at KDE, when code.org came and said, can we do this in Kentucky? It's 10 years ago. And we thought we were on the edge. and we were getting up there and now it's already changed. So I think your point is very well taken. So Nathan, we're an active group, man. You can engage us anyway.
Yeah, no,
Oh, you're muted. You're muted again. Oh, hang on, maybe.
Can you hear me? So I don't think I'm muted, at least on my end. Can you hear me?
Oh, wait, he's back. He's back.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Nope. Travis, you now.
Yep, click it there. And then.
We're at 100 on that one.
We chose it, in my vision.
Oh, here we go. Here we go. Here we go.
So if anything goes wrong, like I need the kids to be.
Real off, review all video.
Where did I get the stages?
Oh,
Oh, wrong button again.
And unfortunately. Nathan, I am so sorry. I don't know why I forget it.
No
Oh,
worries.
you're back. You're back.
Oh, terrific.
I don't know what she did, but she did.
Well, great reminder. You know, we could talk about how technology's changing the world and terrific all day long, but there's no substitute for in-person and interrelational work. Like, it's a real challenge. Thank you all for that engagement. You know, and just to the last point, I really want to stress, if you all are taking notes on these slides, like, do not take this as an endorsement to, you know, bend all of your energies in CTE towards big data, financial tech, and AI and machine learning. That is not what this is about. It's about exactly what you all were talking about. How do we embrace a spirit of agility, a willingness to acknowledge the unknown, a willingness to fail and fail forward and fail productively. That's exactly the spirit at which I'm sharing this. So thank you for picking up on all of that. Just quickly, the same survey that we used to gather that job data also surveys businesses all over the world and asks them to rank every year what they see as the most important set of skills for workers entering careers in their field. And, you know, what you see here is, you know, a continuing valuing of things that you might expect, like, you know, reading, writing, and mathematics, like multilingualism, like the ability to mentor, the ability to use technology. But all of those things kind of built as the floor, and not the ceiling, if you will. Analytic thinking, resilience, flexibility, and agility, which I think is exactly what so many of you were just talking about. Leadership, creative thinking, intrinsic motivation, and self-awareness. This is what businesses say really matter to them, and it is those human-centered skills. By the way, last point on this slide, I want to say that I think it's useful to reflect on what matters to business and economy, because it's important to think through how we can use education as a lever to drive our economy and help young people lead prosperous lives. But don't want to say for a second that the only thing that we value about education is job attainment. It's one piece, it's an important piece. But, you know, personal self-fulfillment, the ability to be a strong community member, the ability to support neighbors and colleagues and families, these are all crucially important too. And these top skills, I would argue, are equally important for those goals as well. So we've taken a look at, oh, excuse me, at that list of skills, compared it against the competencies that are being measured in a number of different education systems in the United States and all over the world. And at NCEE, we've distilled that into a brief that is really centered on young people's thriving and the skills they need to do so. So we take that big broad list and tried to bucket it out into four big themes. What we see matters most are a set of core skills in literacy, numeracy, and critical thinking that without that foundation, nothing else holds. Couple that with habits of learning and well-being that like curiosity, persistence, the ability to fail, as many of you said, um, mental health and well-being. And, just want to acknowledge that investing in those habits is what really helps us to create not only good students for K-12 today, but strong learners across a P20 curriculum and for life. Then contemporary skills, not only fluency in digital tools, but the creativity to apply them and the adaptability to reskill as industry evolves, as coding languages go dead, as things that we thought might really matter become increasingly irrelevant. These are the survival skills for the 21st century. And then lastly, community skills. We would argue that in today's world, the ability to be empathetic, ethical, and collaborative are not soft skills, so to speak. They're really the glue that holds our society together. And being able to disagree respectfully, solve shared problems, these are the things that allow education to be not only an economic driver, but a driver of our communities and our well-being. So thinking about those skills and the extent to which we as systems are helping to prepare young people with them is crucially important, I would argue, because it speaks to, do our young people see education as relevant to them, to their world, to the world of work that they're going into, and how does that keep them motivated? Um, and unfortunately, when you look across the United States, the data here is pretty mixed, and while there are some bright spots, there are also some alarming trends that I think are worth paying attention to. Um, Two-thirds of US students agree that school teaches them skills that will be useful in a job, which is about consistent with the worldwide average. It does mean that a third of US students disagree with that statement. Only about 40% report getting to learn things that interest them. 45% of US students say they love school. But what's really striking about that data to me, and a little bit heartbreaking, I gotta say, uh, is that about three-quarters of third graders say they love school, and only 29% of 11th graders do. Which, I don't want to imply causation there, but when you think about the 22% of US students who are chronically absent, and the relationships between chronic absenteeism and dropout risk, that data becomes increasingly concerning. This is not Kentucky specific data, did not have time to find that. I suspect as you're reflecting on this data, you're thinking about some really positive movements that your state is making. Heard the commissioner acknowledge some real progress to celebrate on the chronic absenteeism front, which is terrific. And you may also be seeing some things that read true as areas to work on. And then, another thing to grapple with, and this is again globally comparative data, um, is that the United States as a whole does a really good job at preparing students with a set of basic skills as compared to the rest of the world. 80% rate, this is data from a global assessment called the PISA, by the way. 80% of US students score at the highest levels in terms of recognizing a main idea, cause and effect. 66% of US students are able to demonstrate the mathematical fluency to convert two different routes, distances or currencies. Um, but PISA is a test that also assesses application of basic skills. And it's there that young people really start to struggle. Given a news article, and that it contains a set of statements, some of which are factual and some of which are framed as that the opinions of people who are speaking, only 14% can make that can just make that distinction. Only 11% can take a bit of scientific knowledge that they're given and then apply it into a different situation, and only 7% can model complex situations in math equations and think through different ways of solving problems. And these are high school students, by the way. So for us at NCE, that data, while perhaps a little sobering, is not a call for doom and gloom. We see it as an opportunity to ask ourselves the question, what, if anything, can we learn from P to 20 education systems in the United States and all over the world that are the highest performing, that are rapidly improving, and excuse the typo there, that are fast innovating as well. And that research, that question is really what drives the document that we'll be discussing in the rest of this session, the NCE Blueprint, Designing Systems That Work. This is not designed to be a policy playbook or manual. It is not designed to be a set of cookie cutter solutions. It's instead meant to do exactly what I hope to do today, which is to drive some dialogue, help folks springboard to a sense of possibility, and think differently about what could be, while also affirming some areas of strength that you already have in place. It contains 4 interdependent components, and while we number them, we're not intending to imply that any one is more important than the other. Quite the contrary. And in fact, we think that it is the interrelationships among all of these components that actually leads to the power of high-performing education ecosystems. And I want to dive into all 4 of these in a little bit of detail today, but just to introduce them quickly, preparing young people for long life learning, not a typo, as I'll explain in a minute, cultivating high capacity forward thinking educators, joining forces to ensure that learners thrive, and thinking differently about system leadership. First, preparing young people for long life learning. We use the phrase long life intentionally as a nod to the fact that we're all living longer, which is terrific. Great things for all of us, for our loved ones, for our families, speaks to real advances in medicine and health and well-being. There are also some real challenges associated with that policymakers are going to have to grapple with. The social safety net for our elderly relatives is going to become increasingly strained. The tax base for people within the workforce, generated by people within the workforce, may start to proportionally decline if steps are not taken. It demands then that we also think about systems for reskilling that stretch, beyond 20. And that's kind of what I want to talk about today. And hat tip to the gentleman talking about the young people, or maybe the not so young people that he's serving up to the age of 29. That work is crucially important and in line with what I want to talk about. So, the systems that we look at are really embracing a spirit. We're saying PK to 12, but I think your frame of P to 20 is really, really important here. that starts with investing in high quality early learning, by setting high standards for quality providers in a mixed market system, emphasizing developmentally appropriate learning through play while also thinking through alignment to primary school curriculum and early digital literacy. Um, Enforcing rigorous professional standards for early learning teachers, and creating enabling conditions and pay comparable to K-12, including ongoing learning opportunities so that early learning providers and educators feel valued. At the same time, these systems are really thinking through how to build a through line through graduation that that involves vetted materials and lesson plans and opportunities for teachers to access materials that are high quality with aligned teacher professional learning to support it. um, Deep conceptual learning for young people, with support for those who struggle as well as those who are excelling. Fluid delivery models that create responsive learning environments, and approaches to assessment that measure what really matters for young people, and embed new content and perspectives. That also means creating meaningful pathways to life after school, including college and career on-ramps from an early age. Um, in many of the highest performing and most innovative education systems that we look at, career connected learning begins as early as primary or elementary school in developmentally appropriate ways. There are early and broad exposures to careers, service and project-based learning opportunities focused on real-world problems, and an opportunity to really crystallize the rationale for why students are learning what they're learning from a very early age. And that continues through to early adolescence. Commitment to applied learning, the ability for student interest and choice to drive some aspects of what they learn, embedded in a core. Work-based learning opportunities for those who choose to seek them, and increasingly the use of digital technologies to deliver immersive career connected learning experiences for those who may not be able to access in person. And then lastly, it also means thinking through how to align career and technical education with the state's strategic economic priorities, building bridges between, as I know you all do, between education and governor's workforce development boards, chambers, and similar bodies. And thanks to those of you representing those voices in the room. Um, and creating portable credentials and modularized post-secondary pathways so that in the end, the system embraces long life learning, and the spirit that there are no dead ends to the learning journeys of individuals within the system. When we look at recent policy shifts that NCEE's partner states are making in response to some of this research, we're seeing an increasing emphasis on statewide graduation promises that are rooted in future-ready competencies, helping all members of the community understand what a diploma means for the competencies young people have acquired. We're seeing an increasing shift from seat time to competency-based progression, the integration of early learning into and early learning as far back as neonatal and even prenatal learning experiences for families into the state's pre-K to 20 education system. Um, Funding for expanded access to real-world learning experiences, new credentialing ecosystems that can ensure portability and modularity so young people can earn credentials that they know have meaning for business, and build on those credentials to create wallets or badges that demonstrate what they've learned, and a real investment in strengthening and aligning career exploration and advising systems acknowledging that many states, and I don't know where Kentucky ranks here, so don't want to imply anything, but are many states that we work with are woefully behind on recommended career advising ratios.
Hey, Nathan, can I stop you right there for a second?
Of course.
So this one I feel like probably hits near and dear to a lot of people at our tables in our work. And so what I want you to do is grab those Post-its, take about 3 minutes, share at your table, but write them down. If you are doing something, your agency is doing something, your co-op is doing something, there are initiatives going on that you're aware of that align with any of these possible levers or anything that Nathan has talked about. Write that on a Post-it with a plus, so we'll know where to put it. And then things that stick out to you that you feel might be challenging, or you're not sure what that means or how we need to pursue it, and we're not in Kentucky, put that down as an add or a change. So take about 3 minutes. Nathan, I hope you don't mind, but I feel like we need to process this a little bit. Because this hits home and I see a lot of things that Kentucky's already starting to dig into. So share at your table what you write down, and then put those in the middle of the table and we'll hit those in a minute. But I've set a timer. Both. You do have Post-its right here in the middle. Yeah. Oh, Post-its are in the middle. Need to throw anything at you.
Thank you.
Scroll left.
Well, we can talk about,
Yeah, I mean.
so Commonwealth recently announced, partial US. Actually, for this line too. We're going to be, and even almost using those as, like, students writing. Writing as a secretary and writing as a. That's one way we're trying to think about, our membership of the moment, or P20 and kind of bridge.
Are you familiar with what we're doing with the
That's what I'm need to work. Projects like that.
Well, yeah, but if that lays on that, there's. All our players. We're so busy and that's what. Oh, I see. It's like, well, it's third of things like that. So. So I would profile this conversation, y'all have to make about that. Maybe because y'all. All right.
Don't forget to write these things down, please.
Okay, so.
But are they?
I was wondering if I know career exploration. Anybody's really cool. They're American focused right now. There's actually. There's a. But they're kind of like. Which is really kind of like scenes in.
Wrap up your thoughts. You'll have more time to add, but wrap up those thoughts. And Nathan, I'm gonna have you go on to number 2 and then we'll share out some ideas. But you clearly have hit some interest.
Okay, so you want me to go on before debriefing? Is that right?
Yeah, go ahead and do number 2, because that includes educators, and then we'll get some feedbacks from the group.
Great.
Keep writing those Post-its, guys.
Great.
All right.
So the second area of the NCEE blueprint, cultivating high capacity, forward-thinking educators. I think we all know that education can only be as good as the teachers and educators we have within the system. And so when we look at high performing and rapidly improving education in the United States and all over the world, baseline, all those systems commit to what we call a virtuous cycle of educator workforce policy. This means investing in recruiting top talent, thinking through how to ensure that teaching is an attractive profession, also making sure that teachers and leaders are prepared to thrive in changing classrooms, while investing in ongoing learning and career advancement for educators and leaders, recognizing that with the world changing as fast as it is, pre-service can't possibly and shouldn't do it all. Ongoing professional learning and agility are going to have to be the norm for the teaching profession. And that really means thinking through how to address those evolving skills and capacities by continuing to revisit what we're thinking about when we talk about the competencies that we value in our educators, thinking differently about how we organize time in schools, how we organize the space of schooling, and how we deploy staff so that schools can be increasingly collaborative and enable teachers who may have different strengths, areas of growth, and skill sets, enabling them to learn from one another, push one another to attain new skills and continue to evolve in their roles. That's all kind of lofty language. From a more concrete policy perspective, it really looks like thinking through how do we ensure that teacher preparation is as competency-based and practice embedded as it can possibly be. And I know many of the universities in the room today. I know many of you are working really, really hard on this and have great success stories to share. It means using clear and consistent criteria for high quality induction and mentoring systems, including how those mentors are recruited, prepared, and rewarded for their service. Incentivizing leadership and among educators and helping them to explore personalized competency-based practice while leveraging digital systems as appropriate to track educator growth and their growth along career pathway continuums. While expanding a notion of distributed leadership in schools, letting teachers think about leading team-based professional learning, and reimagining what the role of the school principal and assistant principal looks like in turn. And then last but by no means least, ensuring that industry professionals have a clear, flexible, yet still rigorous pathway to enter the educator workforce, knowing that we need those professionals, not only for our CTE programs, but for our future pipeline and to keep learning as relevant as it can possibly be. So yeah, I think with that, would leave that slide up, and then Amanda, if you want to and facilitate kind of a report out, some feedback, some processing time, that would be great.
Yeah. So I wanted this to stay up because it connects so well with what I call pillar 1. We always, and this group has always, and we told Nathan, since 2021 has prioritized educators. And we may not always agree on which way to improve and what's having the greatest leverage, but we know that teachers matter and quality teaching matters, and that it is truly a gateway to success in all areas. So what I want you to do is take a couple minutes just to look at the policy levers about what NCEE offers, and put your pluses on that as well. And then in about 3 minutes, I'm gonna give you 3 more minutes to do this second piece. Then I'll ask if anybody wants to share out some aha, because this hits workforce. Even the number, or the first pillar we talked about, students from pre-K all the way through adulthood, it is truly long life learning, as Nathan called it, and that impacts our society, impacts everything. So take 3 more minutes, write post-its that you haven't already done, because we are going to collect those and put those on our boards, and that's going to help us narrow down where we want to focus in on work. Any additional data type pieces that we may not have asked for before, things that we don't know that's going on that may be happening that we're not telling the story. And so take 3 minutes to do that for the teacher workforce. And then we will do a bit of reflection over the first 2. So you can share out some of your ideas. I know we did this with the campus presidents and commissioner and Dr. Perry and of course Dr. Thompson. It was really good, but it came down to a couple topics. And so I'll be anxious to hear what you guys said as well. So I'll set the timer. Take a look at these policy levers, just as something to start triggering your thoughts and ideas, or things that we're already doing. Go.
Well, I know. Also, for part of the.
I will say.
I think all and I think you can't do the first bullet.
Yes, sorry.
So.
Yes.
I mean, so we can decide. Employer-based system of retention. But I heard. Employer-based system leadership. Growth.
Yeah.
Don't lose. So.
What is the innovation because of like compliance and separation and sliding selection, content of feature.
So we got.
When all the other counties registered that done and have side conversations, but you know, I've done some in the past of like what I think we have people their job is but
Giving more flexibility.
ultimately that resonates.
Right, exactly.
That is my
Or it is,
area.
there's this to that, but it's not.
One of my accounts. Yeah.
Creating that they make.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Well, in the scholarship. So a lot of. That's right. I was my former went through years. Masters. Yeah.
Because I'm really putting things out there.
I mean, in the reality, I think they're having now, like, so some of that is good, like, so sort of society, some of them are something around your stuff. Depends on the reject of those interests. You know, that's so that helps.
So it's embedded.
But they're, you know, whether it's. Well,
Just.
Okay, wrap up your comments. Make your final couple post-its. It won't be the end, I promise. All right. So I'm gonna call on a table, excuse me, and you can pick something that you shared or something that someone else shared for pillar 1 or 2 that really stuck out to you. Something you're really proud of that we're already doing, that you feel like is a good alignment, or something you find really interesting that you're like, I think we started on this, but I think we can go further, or we've never done this that I'm aware of, and I think it's a game changer. Whatever really inspired you to share your own or somebody else's. Alistair, I'm gonna ask you, will you pick one that you, either from pillar 1 or 2?
Probably know what I'm gonna say. Pillar 1 is that we're connected, work-based learning, right? I think the energy behind it from the business community, from the education community is very good to hear, and how can we explore it further? But the question is, how do we track that work connected skills? I mean, in your internship, did you just sit around, or did you really interact with your customers? Ensuring that work-based learning can be quantified, packaged, and delivered to the next employer, I think that's the challenge worth taking.
That's good. I hope you wrote that down.
So along those lines.
Okay, good. I'm not writing that down. I'm counting on your post-it. Yes, sir.
I think the very first part was almost a commercial for our new accountability proposal. If you look at what's happening across our districts, we have districts, I think we have 100, and this has not been required in state law, but we have districts, over 150 districts have done what we call profile of a learner. Yes, we're very focused on making sure students have the foundational reading, writing, and reading and mathematics skills. Literacy and numeracy has been a big push. But also, too, we have districts that are developing their own. These are the competencies that are important to our community: lifelong learning, creative thinking, persistence, creative thinking, collaboration, communication. As a matter of fact, that's aligning with the graduate profile that's happening in the post-secondary too. But we have districts that are doing defenses of learning, where kids are not only talking about their test scores, but they're also saying, why did I learn this? How do I apply this? And what does this look like? So we have a lot of students that are walking out of these defenses of learning in their senior year, again, offering internships or jobs straight out of high school. So the focus on, we know that students, and the message that we've been preaching for a long time, I think people across the state, kids are much more than a test score. They're so much more than a test score, but we have to make sure they're prepared for what's next. And what's going to happen is their local communities have to have the opportunity to develop local accountability models that address those. How do we make sure kids are meeting those competencies we expect them? So again, I think that's something that's in the proposal moving into the new into the session coming in January. You'll see a lot of that if you haven't already. But also too, we've done a lot of work when it comes to HQIRs and having I think our repository will start on July 1, where if you meet 80% of the Kentucky academic standards, you're added to a repository of what instructional materials are available. What's even more important, I think, it's also open to parents. So parents can look into those high quality instructional resources that are available to districts also. Other things that Dr. Hargis and CTE, we've talked about extensively here, is making sure we have the opportunity for students to have career exploration in the middle school setting.
Yes.
We think that's so important. As a middle school math teacher, the application of the mathematics is so important.
Yes.
And how does that look in a career topic setting? There's a lot of things that were mentioned as far as educators. We feel like we've seen a lot more connection with our EPPs as we move forward and trying to make sure that we're all on the same path. And Dr. Murphy's been a lot of part of that work too, also EPSB. But we want to make sure that we have educators who are prepared to teach in that way. So those are things that we're looking at as we move forward from the Kentucky Department of Education. But again, you know, Nathan, I'm pretty sure that you went and read our Kentucky United Learn release, our pathway, our call to action, and rebranded it and put it as part of your blueprint, because we're speaking the same language. We are speaking the same language as we move forward, so very happy about that.
Let me add one quick thing. I think it's important for me to say, like teacher prep, we have access to a lot of stuff already, like dual credit. We got it, Alistair, in the top 5. I think we could do a much better job in building a pathway and a pipeline from K-12 early by the time they get to the freshman year career, that we can go ahead and say, you are a part of the program. We can give them clinical-based experiences as they go through the process while they're in high school and early college. I think we can clearly also build a content set of knowledge competencies for elementary school, middle school, and high school through that process. I do believe the portrait of a learner and what we're doing as a graduate profile in higher ed can align up with that particular specialty really well to go deep and quicker, because we lose so many. Would I love to see us base teachers more on a set of competencies like dispositions and so on before they go into teacher prep? I'm not saying we should get rid of praxis or whatever. I'm just saying that there's a whole lot other authentic ways we can do that as they go through the process. So for me, this has to be a way that we think about it in a very P20 sort of mechanism. And also building those high need areas, whether it's chemistry teachers or math teachers. I think there's multiple ways that we can think about this with this particular group.
To add to what Dr. Thompson's saying is our educator rising programs across the state are in that line of work. But something that we've been used as a model is the apprenticeship program within Nelson County to align those comps. But the problem is, I think Dr. Thompson's right on cue with this, is it's in pockets. This is something that has to be spread throughout the Commonwealth. And we've worked with Senator Higdon on some legislation on how can students get the dual credit work so that maybe they go straight through a program and have tuition, basically tuition free, and become an educator and walk straight into the classroom at the end of their post-secondary experience.
So, and one of the things with the apprenticeship work, and as that is expanding across the state, we now have 18 school districts associated with our apprenticeship program through the Federal Department of Education. And the University of Louisville has just added and been awarded one of those apprenticeship grants as well. We're starting to establish models of support, and I was just sharing with our table, layering in the support that's necessary to do the applied-based preparation, even starting in that high school space that Dr. Thompson was talking about. Because what we're also finding is, and this is going to be very logical, you're going to be like, well, of course that's what you found. But it is a stress on our teachers, our current teachers, to have copious amounts of kids in their classroom who are not really kids, they're university students preparing early to be the next generation of educators. And that is a level of supervision and instruction in its own right. And the generation of teachers who are currently leading our classrooms are not yet prepared for that. That's not their fault. That's just something that was not systemic. Now, as our students graduate they will be more prepared for that, right? So we're going to see a generational shift, but the current circumstances for our teachers require a more intrusive support system for the current teachers to accept the apprentices and that K-12 learner in those early spaces to then prep to be a university and then fully certified teacher. So it's a systematic review, but it's growing and it is expanding. And so hopefully 18-19 will become 100 and how many districts?
171.
71. So, just a few to go.
Handful to go. You're almost there. Awesome. And Matt, what about you guys? We're gonna pick something out you guys discuss?
Yeah, well, just a couple of observations. I mean, I think in our first slide, I think our general consensus was that, we could probably point to each of those bullets and say there's something to some level of significance that is happening or has been happening over time. I think one place where we weren't maybe quite as sure as the table, this could be just, I think, maybe collective ignorance. The competency-based work in both of these areas, I don't think any of us are suggesting that it's non-existent, but we weren't sure in terms of scale or progress moving forward, where we are and some of that. So that, I think that jumped out, at least to me, on both of these.
Great. I think that's a great observation.
Well, and we talked a bit about that and how the policy environment drives the systems. And if those incentives in the policies push, those kinds of certain behaviors in the systems, then what I see across the Commonwealth is that people just put their heads down and do what those incentives ask for. And so that's why it's so important to think about the policy landscape and how that connects to the types of changes we want to see, because right now there's not as much incentives in the policies that are going to drive that in the systems. And I think that's one of our opportunities.
Yes. Great point. All right, Nathan.
Thank you again for all that.
You're muted again. Daggone it. Don't know why. I haven't touched a thing.
That's you, Nathan, I think, isn't it?
I am not muted.
yeah.
on mine.
There you go. Okay, you're
Okay. Just said thank you for the rich discussion. Really appreciate it. I realize I am over time, so I'm just gonna speed through these last two pillars, and then Amanda, let you use any remaining time to close out discussion as you'd like. Third pillar we call joining forces to ensure learners thrive. And that's really about recognizing that learning happens everywhere. It happens in schools. It also happens in homes and communities. And so meeting students where they are, engaging families, and is really important for both student engagement and well-being. And systems around the world are doing a lot of work around thinking through how they start to acknowledge some of that informal learning, and help educators to recognize it. In terms of how they do that, rooms like the room that all of you are in today, cross-sector, cross-agency collaboration, crucially important. Thinking through how to support families and children from the start through high-quality childcare, which is crucially important and devilishly challenging to fund at scale. So that is a kind of a wicked problem of policy and practice that systems are engaging with. And then, continuing to invest in families and communities and family and community engagement. In terms of what policy can do, really advancing and investing in partnerships that center families and youth voice, leveraging cross-sector partnerships, integrating and acknowledging and coordinating community-based learning experiences, catalyzing employer engagement and upskilling initiatives through incentives, which could be tax abatements, expanding access to childcare, and then ensuring that career-connected learning is supported through regional hubs that organize and leverage those partnerships and technology. And then lastly, all of this is only possible if we think a little bit differently about school and system leadership. Given the pace of change in the world, basic leadership fundamentals are as important as they've ever been. Building coherence and alignment and fostering a culture of continuous improvement in whatever systems or schools you lead. But those fundamentals are very clearly the floor, no longer the ceiling. It's also necessary to cultivate leaders who are able to revisit assumptions, broaden coalitions, sometimes by inviting in voices that are a little bit uncomfortable, thinking globally and being willing to benchmark against the best in the world, while also being intentional, not pivoting, changing course every single time, a new piece of evidence comes in, but using data and evidence to think through how to anticipate the future while charting a course and maintaining that course with intentionality. So that can look like investments in system leadership training, helping systems to think differently about futures and futures thinking, investing in monitoring, evaluation, and ongoing learning systems to drive adaptive leadership, and also building, catalyzing, and investing in the kinds of spaces that are necessary for cross-sector communication and knowledge sharing to drive innovation, as well as to coordinate system leadership. So that was super rapid, owing to time. And also want to make sure, Amanda, you are able to give folks space to reflect on either these questions or any others that you want to surface. But with that, would just say thank you very much. I will stick around for a minute, but turn it, Amanda, back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Nathan, so much. So much information. Yes, you will get this slide deck. And we will come back to this to noodle on it a little bit, think about it. And if you have any questions now for Nathan, please ask, feel free to ask. He is a wealth of knowledge, and if he doesn't have the information, he will find it to get to you. He had a lot of questions from our campus presidents and delivered on methodology and resources. And so I will open the floor to you all to ask Nathan any questions before we let him log off. Nathan, you were so thorough.
Good job, Nathan.
Yeah, so Nathan, thank you again for being with us today and sharing. What I want you to do is take the Post-its that you have already done, put them in the middle of your table. And Robin and I will take care of those. We're going to give you a bio break and a lunch break to breathe and think. And then we're going to come back towards the end to think about pillar 3 and 4, because that's working together, wraparound supports and systems leadership, which I feel like that is this group. And so you just need some time to refuel, stand up. Bathrooms are out of this, right out the door you came and immediately across the hall. And we have Panera that Robin has got us all organized. So please eat. Everybody in the room is welcome to eat. And we will come back in at 12:20. How's that? That gives people time to stretch and refuel. 1:20.
120.
I meant 1:20. I'm so sorry.
Central Time.
Jim and I were talking about time today and I'm already off. So yes, 1:20, and we will start promptly on time because we have got a lot on our show. All right, enjoy.
Oh, no, no.
I just put it back down.
Okay.
It wasn't now.